Hello, good evening, and welcome to Tuesday's Emotional Awareness Discussion, the weekly guest show. And this week I have with me Courtney Johannesen from upstate of New York in America. So thank you ever so much for joining us tonight, Courtney. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. Great to be here.
You're very welcome. It is a slight change of lineup to anybody I've mentioned last week. We were going to be talking about Switched On Kids this week, but that lady has now rescheduled to the 1st of June. But it will still be happening. But Courtney has amazingly stepped up at short notice at a quick plea in a Facebook group from me and said, yes, I will do it. And I'm like, I was like, so thank you.
I'm so glad we connected.
Yes, absolutely. So anyway, this evening's topic, and welcome to whoever's online. If anybody's online, pop a likes down and say hello in the chat and good evening. I'm just trying to find the comments on here. Here we go. And so so this evening's topic is going to be about yoga and well-being, and again, I love it when it's not just about the well-being, but there is always an amazing backstory behind what people do. And Courtney has an amazing backstory behind becoming a yoga instructor and other therapies that she offers alongside that. So thank you for joining us this evening. And certainly, so would you like to start by introducing us, tell us more about what you actually do? Good evening, Yvette. And let us know a little bit about how you got into this, a bit, just introduce your backstory for the yoga.
Sure, absolutely. I am a corporate wellness provider, mindset coach, and yoga teacher. I offer different virtual programs to support mental and physical health. And with yoga and meditation, I work on applying the principles and tools of yoga to help people cultivate their sense of well-being. And I got into all of this many years ago when I was having some of my own personal health challenges. I was diagnosed with a genetic condition, and it was a bit of a fork in the road moment where I realized I could just kind of wait and see what happened. I knew that the condition had some, certain prognosis of what could happen, or I could take better control of my health and learn how to be healthier so that no matter what happened, I was in a healthy place. So I took those steps to learn how to be healthier, and that meant changing my diet and learning how to eat in better ways. Also bringing some movement into my daily routine, and that's where I turned to yoga. And also some stress management practices. I needed to learn how to better handle daily stress as well as just some bigger life stress with work projects and family situations and the things that we all deal with in life.
Yes, because thank you, that's beautiful. And because when you talk about stress, it's amazing. You're right. Stress is at work, stress is at home with family, stress is in your own thoughts, feelings, and belief. And it's also if you've got health concerns and you are worried about your future and a prognosis, that's another form of stress. Sort of stress that's out of control rather than ones you can take back in. So you had a lot of stress to deal with all in one go.
Yes, and I found that even starting those small changes helped me feel more empowered, where I was taking back control of my health. And, choosing those healthier foods did involve some extra work, but I knew I was doing what was good for myself. Same thing with dedicating the time to working on my yoga practice and working on meditation, breath work, journaling. All of these things took some time and effort, but I knew that it was valuable because it was going to help my overall stress and therefore my overall health.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing to hear you say that too, because that's something I've covered on previous episodes, is about how it's not wise to rely just on one therapy or one strategy to overcome whatever it is you're dealing with, whether it is a stress, anxiety, depression, whatever it is. And it is important to have that mixture. So with the yoga, the breath work, the journaling all together. And it is, I love the fact that you're already talking, like you're out there, you've got it, holistic. Yes. I love the term holistic. You don't just go, right, I'm just going to do journaling and that's going to cure my life. I'm not just going to do yoga and it's going to cure my life. You have to look at different aspects of that stress as well. And like you said, whether it is life, like journaling's good about clearing your head at the end of the day, the breath work's good physically and sort of muscular helps your neuro system. So yeah, it's amazing. So why tell us a bit more about the yoga. You said yoga helped you with the stress but also helped you physically, so how did you go about taking that through from there into a business?
Well, once I started to see some of the changes that were happening from my yoga practice, I noticed I was becoming physically stronger, more flexible in my body, improving my sense of physical balance. I just felt compelled. I had to keep learning more and more about these practices. And one of the big things I found was that yoga is more than just movement, but it is that system of mindfulness, breath work. There's many lifestyle principles that can relate to how we are taking care of ourselves and how we are relating to other people. And all of that is part of yoga. So I became really interested about the principles that could be applied into life and some just different life situations. So I began to study more and more and went through different training programs to become a certified yoga teacher and started to feel like it was my purpose to share these things with other people. From the impact it was having on my life and this transformation I was going through, I thought so many other people could benefit from learning how to manage stress better, how to cultivate their well-being and take care of themselves in positive, healthy ways, and making all of these things more accessible. I think sometimes when we think about making changes to our health, it can seem kind of daunting. Like, where do we begin and how do we get started? And it just seems like this out there kind of thing that we just don't really know how to take and apply to actually get started. So I wanted to bridge that gap.
Oh, that's amazing. And yeah, I'll agree, it is daunting. And I had a year like that last year where I was doing so many different things, and I really do need to do some more yoga again. I've let that one slip a bit. And yes, I did find it helpful. But yeah, I do need to do some more. But yeah, it is daunting. And I think sometimes we're saying as well about using the different therapies, but I think sometimes you've got to say, right, let me start with one. And then when you've got that going, then add in another one. And then when it's going, and I think you have to build up in stages, but also being aware about what each one is doing for you and what gap it's filling. And then looking and saying, okay, so I'm doing this, this and this, they're helping. But if there's still something outstanding emotionally, or you're still feeling stress or anxiety, it's about analysing that, isn't it? And having those tools to analyse and say, okay, this is what I'm still missing. What can help that? What else can I put in? And like you say, with the diet, is it physical stress and the diet? Is it tension in your body and the yoga stretches you out? Is it stress in the mind? And I say it's all different types of stress. Is it heartache or something else where your feelings have been hurt and you might need some therapy or counselling or a friend to talk to? So I love how, it's all about breaking that down and strategies and tools. But yoga, like you said, encompasses so much in itself. And when somebody really does practice it properly, I love that. Because then you get I've just treated myself today to a diffuser. But with yoga, you can then incorporate things like your aromatherapy as well, can't you? So
Right.
you spoil all the senses sort of physically and visually with all your coloured outfits. I love talking about what you wear is raises the energy, and then you've got the senses, and then you've got sound with the music and a teacher talking you through. And I love that it incorporates all those senses as well.
Absolutely. It's a full sensory experience. Even going through a movement practice, yoga asks us to pay attention to what's happening in different parts of our body. And sometimes that is coming into alignment in a specific pose. Sometimes it's just feeling, how does my foot feel, or my left hand? And then also paying attention to the actual movement and what those sensations feel like. So it really incorporates all of the senses, like you said, and that's part of what makes it so powerful for being aware of our emotions. We start to hone in on how we're feeling in each particular moment and in each particular pose. And then we start to translate that into our life off the mat when we're not practicing yoga in that physical sense, but we can bring those practices into our life.
Oh, amazing! Yeah. So, yeah, I just love talking about it. It's just like you say, so sensory in terms of that. But when we're talking about in terms of emotional awareness and about helping people with emotional states, have you worked with people who've come in with all different states, like anger management, as well as people with stress and anxiety? And how has it worked for them?
Definitely. I think one of the ways that yoga really helps with about any and all kinds of emotions is the mindfulness aspect. And mindfulness, the definition I like to use comes from John Kabat-Zinn. He's one of the principal founders of our modern mindfulness movement. And
Okay.
he says that it's the awareness that comes from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non judgmentally. And I think that last part is really key because for so many of us, we might feel a particular emotion, but if it's one that we would rather not have, we get judgmental on ourselves about it. We start to beat ourselves up about why I'm feeling sad or angry or frustrated or depressed and lonely. And then we start into this cycle of trying to resist the emotion. And when we're doing that and trying to push it away, we are not in a mindful place, but instead we're actually fueling that emotion and making it worse by trying to deny it.
Yeah.
So when we work on being mindful and letting each emotion have its space, whatever it is, we're accepting how we feel instead of trying to resist it.
Oh, that's really nicely put. I know, say, when you talk about being in the now, and we were saying about the different senses and focusing on your posture and the sound and the sight and the smell and everything, that is beautiful. And it's like you say, full on experiential mindfulness. It's a really lovely way to put it, and yeah, very soothing. Because I think I've also heard a lot about, is it like angry kids yoga and stuff like that, all different types of yoga, isn't there? So do you work with different groups like that as well, where you like focus, or do you know people who do that?
Well, I personally don't work with children. I That's just not my specialty, but I do know others who do, and it is also so powerful for children to learn how to work with their emotions. And if they are feeling angry, what can they do to work out that energy instead of holding it inside? And it gives them a way to process through those emotions instead of letting them build up.
Oh, Ralph says, oh, good evening, Ralph. Sorry, Ralph says, can you put the gentleman's name in the chat, please, regarding mindfulness? He says he's got a slight echo coming back, but we've tried to resolve that. That might even be my end. But yeah, so you did say about the gentleman's name.
Yes, I can put that in the chat, I think. John Kabat-Zinn.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, because I heard you say it, but I'm not sure how to spell the surname. So, yeah. But yeah, thank you, Ralph. Yes, we'll definitely put that in the chat. Oh, that's come through on private. John Cabot. Oh, right. No, I would never have known to spell it like that. There we go. Hopefully that will paste across to there. There we go. John Cabot-Zinn.
Did that show up properly?
Yep, that's gone through on the chat now. Yep, lovely. Thank you. So so that's I practice a lot of mindfulness, and I use it in my group. I do my mindful posts on a Monday every week in the group. But I will be honest, I did not know the name of the gentleman behind it. So I just, I like to script things out and work through the senses and talk about the senses in terms of emotions and how each of the senses can have both positive and negative emotions on us. In like sound can have a really negative effect even when we talk to ourselves. And at the same time, we can use that knowledge to make it positive. So it's really powerful to be able to turn that around.
That's a great point about our self-talk. It's so powerful the way we are talking to ourselves. And, we could be our biggest critic or our best friend. And paying attention to our self-talk is another great way to tune into our thoughts and emotions. Are we making them work for ourselves or against ourselves?
Yeah.
And the great thing is that once we have that awareness, we always have that ability to shift. And I like to use the practice of setting an intention, even for a whole day or a week or a month, but even at a smaller level, maybe for a particular moment or a difficult conversation, maybe a meeting that's coming up and you're unsure about how that will go. And just thinking about, how do I want to be in this moment? How do I want to feel? And maybe it doesn't completely align with how I currently feel, but by setting that intention and bringing our mind to that place about how we want to be, we're planting a little seed in our mind that sets the stage for those qualities to start to emerge. So it's a great way to reshift and readjust our focus if we are not feeling particularly well and want to be feeling differently going into, a conversation, a day, an event, anything like that.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. And again, so just going back to the bit you were saying about setting intentions, I just suddenly thought I will try my headphones as well, just to see if that cuts out that echo that Ralph was saying about. So bear with me. I've got to swap my system over. Right, we'll give that a try, Ralph, and just let me know if that's any better. I just get strung up for the meeting now. my laptop's a long way away over there. So yes, intentions was one that I tend not to think of it so much now, but there have been times when I've used that really purposefully with my son. And we used to go to a weekly club, and we were part of the Toastmasters group, so we used to do public speaking, and it was really good for him to learn to think about what he was saying in terms of a safe audience and learn how to take constructive criticism. But we had this little routine. We'd get in the car and say, right, we'd offload 10 minutes each, we'd offload, and he'd tell me what he wants, I'd tell him what he wants, and then we'd say, right, now let's have a positive intention from the meeting. What do you want to learn from today's meeting? So we knew what the topic of the night would be, and we knew roughly, who was speaking, etc. So we would say, right, tonight we're going to look at body language or tone of voice, or might be about the content or particular alliteration. And then we'd set an intention to both listen out for the same thing, to then be able to have a conversation about that on the way home.
Wow,
So,
I love that.
and that was really powerful in helping him to get the most from the group as well. So in the same way, setting intentions for yoga, meditation, mindfulness, journaling, that intention is, okay, if I'm going to journal this week, when I look back at the end of the week, what do I want to get from it? Do I want to see progress? Do I want to see better self-talk? Do I want to see, that I've actually paid attention to other people or my finances or something, you know. So intentions, I think, can be really, really powerful tool as well. But it's not one I tend to think to talk of now, even though I use it. But it's great to hear you bring that up. Thank you.
Yes, I love how you use that with your son too, to have a point of conversation. And it created that focus for you both during the meeting. And then after, you could come back and share your thoughts around it. So that's a really nice tool to use with another person when you
Yeah.
are engaging in some type of event together. I love that.
Yeah, and again, it could be work meetings, it could be personal, could be sitting down watching a film together. What are we looking out for? Good acting, good costumes, you know, just. But it's a great way of saying setting an intention, but it's getting all that negativity out the way and having something to look forward to. And I think having purpose and something to look forward to with that intention is powerful, and it takes you out of that stress zone into that motivational mindset. And then it's bonding as well, because you have that positive conversation afterwards, and it's such a skill set to be able to then have that conversation constructively. And yeah, it would be a really good one for a lot more people to use. And, you know, if parents with teenagers and colleagues with each other and managers with staff, it's really powerful.
Absolutely. It gives that point to reconnect and come back and share and engage with each other after.
Yeah.
So it's that aligning around that common purpose and coming back to reconnect.
I suppose it's almost like in emergency services, they'd have a debrief.
Right.
But they say, right, the intention is to go out and save a life, and then we come back and we debrief. And there is strategies for doing that in certain industries, but in personal lives, we tend not to do it. And it's almost like a sort of a much more friendly, constructive bonding way of doing that.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And like you said, in some of those more formal work situations, it might be looking at what went well, what didn't go well, and regrouping after the event, which has its own value to learning and growing and moving forward too. So it's true that we think about that in more formal settings, but maybe not as much with our personal relationships. But I think there's a lot of value to doing that. I love it.
Yeah, and so again, you know, with any therapy doing as well is people who do go for therapy, what's my intention from it? And I think, you know, for people who do go for counselling and psychological therapies as well, if you don't go with that intention of, look, this is what I want to cure, and they go along and say, oh, well, I've got to go along and I don't, you know, and you expect, and it's more expectations, I expect them to cure me, that doesn't work. But when you go with the intention of, I'm going because I want to resolve this emotion, or I want to talk about that situation, or I want to achieve that goal, those intentions are really, really important. And it's amazing how that all ties in.
Yeah, and the example you just gave there was also a nice differentiation between having a growth mindset and more of a stuck, fixed mindset, or even a victim mindset where I want them to cure me.
Yes.
But with the other approach, the person is taking charge of their health. I want to get this
Yes.
out of it. I want to grow and gain these skills. And I think that stepping into our own power like that is such a big part of our own healing and mindset shifts that help us grow and get more out of our own emotional intelligence, where we can see, like, we do have our own power and our own capabilities, and maybe we just need to learn some new skills or make some shifts, but
Yeah.
we actually have everything that we already need. And I know learning this through various forms was a big mindset shift for myself. I started in more of that victim mindset where I was looking for the magic cure to make my life and my health better. And of course, that didn't come until I realized I had the power. And so that mindset really is an underlying foundation to, the way we take charge of our health and the way we show up in our lives all around.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely spot on. And I love what you say about victim mindset as well, victim and survivor mindset. And I think that's one that's been very strong with me. You know, you either can carry on being the victim or you can be the survivor. You can't be the survivor while you are still in victim status. Like, you have to get out of that first. And then, you know, so you can't be, oh, I'm surviving, but leave yourself being subjected to being a victim, you know, in a difficult situation, whether it's abusive or something, or, you know, if you're being overloaded with work and you're not dealing with the burnout and the workload and not talking to managers. You know, I've been there where I've had burnout at work, and I could have just carried on, and you'll never survive if you stay in that victim mode. You can keep saying, yeah, I'll survive. It's like drowning. Yeah, I'm surviving, but you don't get out the water, you know. Eventually, you're going to still be saying, no, I'm surviving, as you take your last breath, sort of thing, you know. So you have to get out of that situation and then go, right, now survivor mode. I've come through it. I've got to transform from it. I've got to move forward. But at the same time, there are also people who are, oh my God, I'm drowning. And you pull them out the water, and 10 years later, they're still saying, I'm drowning. So it's like, it's like stuck in victim mode. And so it's about understanding that situation. And then you get those people where they are like emotionally drowning, as I say, you know, as I like to use the analogy. And it is like they're drowning in their own emotions. And this is how it was with my son. It was like I'd spend 2 or 3 hours talking him out of that situation, like get him back on dry ground and say, right, you're safe for tonight. And it was almost like saying, I've pulled you out the water, and the next day jump back in. I'm drowning. And it's like, yeah, but you know, you've got to listen and learn. And it took me a long time to find that way to get through to him about how to stop jumping back in that water and start saying safe. So that victim survivor mentality is really powerful. And this is one of the most powerful people, most amazing people I've met. And I think I've mentioned him before. And we talk about survivor mentality. Was a gentleman that I met who'd actually stepped on a landmine in Cambodia. And he lost an arm and a leg. And he remembers being put on a stretcher and them saying he won't last an hour. And he remembers them saying he won't last a day, he won't last a week. And everybody was telling him he wasn't going to survive. He went on to run ultramarathons with his prosthetic limb.
Wow.
And he said, but because what happened was somebody had lied about having cleared a particular route. They ticked all the paperwork to say they cleared the route, but actually they'd gone off down the pub because they had a drinking problem. So he used that route to go back to camp, and it hadn't been cleared. But he said, I would rather be the person that stepped on the mine than the one that lied. And that is survivor mentality at its fullest. That was amazing to hear him. And he gave a couple of hours speech to a group of work people, and I was like, oh my God, I want him on the show.
Right. Wow. A powerful story.
Yeah. But that's the difference. And there is... All right. Sorry, got messages popping up. Yeah, so that's the power of really understanding the difference. And I think for a lot of people, we talk about that, but it is just genuinely realising that that's resilience. That's emotional awareness. That's resilience. That's being able to use that mindset and use all of the strategies like you teach, like I teach, and being able to use them to grow and say, yeah, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep living. I'm going to enjoy life no matter what happens.
Right. And I like how you make the distinction that the growth has to be part of the healing. We can't grow while we're still in the situation. And I think that, you know, that's important for people to realize, because the growth comes after the event is complete. But during the event, it's more about that survival. We're trying to get through it and use our coping strategies. And then after, we have those growth methods that can support us through that growth and healing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. But I think there is a certain amount of growth you can do in preparation, but I think there is a limit. You know, I mean, personal development is valuable at any time. You know, if you're drowning in water, it's not a bad thing to learn to swim at that moment. So there are some things we can do, but there's still a limit to how much you can keep swimming before you need to get out the water and have a break. So there is always value in personal development, no matter what status you're in. And I'm pretty sure people who have been stuck in some pretty horrendous stories at times, and stage, not stories, but situations, have said there are things they can learn and grow from till they find that freedom from it. So, but definitely the biggest amount of growth comes once you're free and you learn and you reflect and you're like, okay, now I can get into survivor mentality. And
Right. Yeah. That willingness to find the good and improve on it. And, maybe you take that challenging situation and turn it into something. I know for some people, they've had some very difficult experiences in their life and it becomes their work or their life's purpose. And so we
yes,
can really find some some deep meaning in difficult situations if we choose to look for it as well.
yeah, yes, that's an interesting point actually, because like you said, nearly everybody who has a value and a purpose in what they've come through and creates a life from it is one thing, but there are also plenty of other people who go through something, they go into survivor mode, but then they put it behind them and go and do whatever else is their value in life. But nearly everybody who does public speaking or podcasts and videos and talks about business in public, they've nearly always got some powerful reason why they're doing what they do. Very few people do it just so, oh, I just think I'll go and do that and just get on with it. Some people do. They're just, oh, I just want to go and do yoga, but to know that you did it for such a purpose makes it so much more powerful when you're helping other people. And I think that's the same with anything, if you, whatever you're going to learn, so much more powerful when that teacher or coach or mentor has that backstory and that survivor mindset that goes with it, as you say.
And I'm so grateful for those people sharing their story because then they get to inspire others who listen. And I think that power just ripples out into everyone else who gets to hear their story. So we get to kind of take those little bits and pieces of their journey and maybe integrate it into our own life. If, maybe we're feeling stuck and we need a little inspiration and we hear one of those powerful stories, that can uplift us and realize, well, if they can make it through this challenging time, I can make it through this time as well. That might be challenging to me. So, we can see that we we all have our struggles and feel emotions, difficult emotions as well. And I think a lot of times when we're going through an emotional experience, it feels like we are alone. No one has ever been here before.
Yeah.
And, we know that's not true. Everybody feels the difficult emotions, but it's great to have that way to connect with other people who have had those experiences, and that can help uplift us and give us a little bit more strength to work through those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. That inspiration, and we're all so connected all around the world. We are so interconnected in supporting each other. You say nobody is truly independent and goes through the whole of life without needing another person in their life. Nobody's truly independent. But at the same time, there is a lot of strength we can find in ourselves, which is great. But yeah, definitely sharing stories is very, very powerful. I mean, this is the new version of storytelling. And storytelling has been going on for as long as humans have lived, from what I can make out. Even if it is cave day paintings and they just put handprints on the wall or whatever, but there was little animals or something. But storytelling is how humans have become the society we are today. And so much to learn, so much.
Absolutely. And, I think when we share our stories, we tell another person who might be struggling that they are not alone, and we create that connection. And so, when one person's willing to share and have that vulnerability and that bit of exposure to say, this is what I went through, and maybe it wasn't great, but here's how I came out of it, here's what I learned, we can really create those deeper connections too that take away some of the negativity. Maybe it's shame or feel like we need to hide around some of our challenges. And I think the more we can reduce that and make difficulty more normalized, if you will, then I think we can be able to support each other even better.
Oh, that's a really nice way of putting it. I like that. Making difficulties more normalised. I love it. And yes, nobody is truly alone, as you say. So yeah, just think of moving on as well. You talked a little bit about breath work as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about breath work and how you find that helps, and if you've got any background knowledge behind it that says sort of why that's so important as part of the mix as well?
Absolutely. Breathwork is one of the most powerful ways we can regulate our nervous system. And for anybody listening, our nervous system is in charge of our stress response. So when we're stressed and our stress levels are high, we're in fight or flight mode, where we are ready to handle any potential threat, either by fighting it or running out of that situation so that we can keep ourselves safe. But when we are not in a stress response, our
Yeah.
body goes into what's called rest and digest mode, where we're able to process our experiences and we can literally process digestion through our body better. All of our internal organs and systems work better because our energies are not going to handling any particular threat outside in our environment. So, breath work is a really great way to regulate our nervous system. If we're feeling very stressed, we can take our energy down to be more calm and peaceful. Or if we're feeling really sluggish, we can do certain breath practices to lightly elevate and boost our energy. So, for many of the clients I work with, they are in this higher activated stress response a lot of the time. And breath work helps them to kind of complete the stress cycle and allow them to move into that rest and digest phase so that they're not staying in elevated stress. And elevated stress can be harmful to our
Yeah.
body and mind. It's um, causing our body to produce certain stress hormones that can accumulate in the body, cause aches, pains, tension, but also can cause and contribute to deeper health problems. It's been connected to cancer and other, more chronic conditions as well. So we really want to find ways to end and close the stress cycle once we do have those stressful moments or stressful situations in life. And breath work gives us a way to do that in a pretty immediate sense. You can do it anywhere, anytime, and people around you don't even need to know that you're doing a breathing practice. So it's a great way to manage your stress in a little bit of a secretive way.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. And I love the way you talk about closing the cycle. Because one of the things I like to talk about, and I don't know whether the cursor is, I don't know if anybody can see the cursor on the screen, but if not, I'll point. So when we talk about close the emotional cycle up here, emotional cycle on a healthy cycle would not incorporate the black. You would start at the yellow, you'd work round towards either the red or the blue. So you'd probably get motivated to do something, take action, and then you'd take in a little bit of like inner thought. So you'd take care of yourself in the middle, have a little bit of time to reflect, so you'd sort of come back up the other side. Probably easier to do it on here actually. So healthy emotional cycle would be, when you finish being happy, you're like, okay, now what do I do? So you go out, you do something, you take care of yourself, have time to think and reflect, and the outer circle is the outer world of change. So you've got inner and outer change, but it's, to me, a healthy emotional cycle would be like here, like a halo. Life's perfect, you've got a little golden halo on, as opposed to somebody who's got an emotional cycle down here would be aggressive and fearful and depressed. So when you talk about that and using each of those emotional states is like you say, associated with dopamine, with cortisol, with adrenaline. And then if you've got a complete overload of cortisol and adrenaline over a long time, that's when you're in depression. And it's about being able to find a way, like you say, to automate those emotions, reduce those negative chemicals, and find a way to bring yourself back to that top. And like you said, for me, it's like nobody will go even to the happy part of the emotional cycle and stay there, because even that is being stuck. And They're like, you're like, then there's boredom kicks in. Now what? All challenges are finished. All my jobs are done. Now what? What do I do? I'm bored. So to close that, like you said, it's really important. And in caveman days, it would have been you go out, you fight for your food. You would have then thought about what you'd done. Your thoughts would have said, I need to go home, and you calm down and you wind down, you go back to your family, and then you're happy around the campfire and you eat, and then you're like, all the stress is gone, and then you go to sleep for the night. But we don't live in a cave these days, and we don't go out and fight the way they do, and trying to use that emotional cycle, which still belongs to a caveman, in today's society is entertaining.
Right. And I think a lot of times it's keeping us stuck in that more elevated stress where our threats are maybe not as life-threatening, but they're more constant. Where, we go to work and we get stuck in traffic, and then we go to work and we have to finish this report that's due today. And then, we have to go to this series of meetings and get more reports and information thrown at us. And so we're trying to constantly process everything that's happening while more things are happening. And we don't get that chance to close the cycle like you were describing.
Like I say, and then you go home already worrying about what you got to do the next day, what's going on at home, what you're going to cook for tea, when you've got to go and get more shopping in, paying the bills. Don't forget to ring mum,
Right. You have a short fuse by the time you get home, and you wonder then, why am I snapping at my family when I care about them and I don't want to be this way? And, it creates a lot of that internal struggle because we want to value this time with the people we care about, and we're showing up this way that we don't really like. So it's a real challenge to find these ways to de-stress in the way that we're living these days in our current life.
Yeah, so to do, like you say, whether it is the yoga, the breath work, the journaling, whatever it is finding a time and a purpose for putting that in every night. If it's closing that emotional cycle off up there, that's the purpose for doing it. So that you can, like a caveman, go to bed happy, stress-free, relaxed, and get up the next day, because whether you worry about them all night or whether you sleep peacefully at night, those next jobs the next day will still be there. Just make a list of them before you go home. Leave the list on your desk, not in your head. Go home and leave it behind.
Yes. Yeah. Right, because you want to come back the next day as the good version of yourself. And so, when we come back with that fresh mindset, we have those new ideas and we're ready and able to tackle those projects. But if we're still holding on to what we did the previous day and feeling sluggish and kind of dragged down by it all, then it's harder to get through that day. And these days just compound and build up like that. So we really want to work on, finding those ways to manage the stress so that it doesn't become chronic and doesn't go into burnout as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hit that a couple of weeks ago with the burnout. So we were just saying before we came live, as a bit of a laugh, I finally finished January's to-do list yesterday. And I had been getting burnt out, and I've already written my next to-do list on there. This is stuff I've still got to do to build the business. And I'm getting cramps again. Ouch. Trying to pick that up and I got cramp in my hands. I did that once when I was serving peas up, and I got cramp in my little finger while I was serving peas, and they just went doing everywhere. I spent the next 5 minutes crawling around the kitchen picking them up, crying with laughter. But
at least it was laughter.
I was crying my laughter. What time to get cramp while I'm serving peas up? This went doing everywhere. Anyway, completely off topic. But yeah, that was funny. Sometimes we have to laugh at the weaknesses as well.
Oh, absolutely. Laughter is great for stress relief. If we can make light of ourselves and what's happening, we're not taking everything so seriously, and laughter releases those positive brain chemicals to release stress. So they say laughter is medicine, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a really good sign as well that someone's in a good place. Can also be a sign that people sometimes are covering things up. There's a subtle difference when somebody's joking and avoiding a topic, and they
Right,
use it as a denial and avoidance.
right. True,
Um,
true.
but there is a subtle difference when somebody's genuinely laughing and having fun. And again, that's another one just to be aware of. Are you joking and mucking around and having fun to cover up and avoid dealing with things? And do you still just not want to deal with them in public, but maybe still need to go and deal with them privately, just on your own reflection, your own strategies? But again, closing that emotional cycle, not avoiding it, because that's like an addiction in itself, avoiding it.
Yes, I think that's so common too, is, we might turn to those things that immediately make us feel better, whether it's TV or internet shopping or food or things like that. And those things can be a bit of a band-aid where we're just covering up the problem and maybe we just don't have to see it and face it right now, but it's not actually helping to close the cycle. So they're a bit of distraction, which can have its place and its value. But if we're falling into those distraction traps too much, we might need to look at other ways to regulate our stress as well.
Yeah, and I think men in particular have this big banter thing going on in certain work environments, in particular in construction, engineering stuff, where there's a predominantly male environment for work. It tends to be this very much like not wanting to talk about emotional things, and they do purposefully muck about and banter with each other. And some people do genuinely like that and enjoy it. But I think there's also an element of being aware of how much of it is banter and how much of it could potentially be upsetting someone. You don't know what they've been through, and you don't know what they're hiding, but tends to make it much harder for men to talk about it because of that as well. So it's a two-way thing. They use it to cover things up, but it's also it can, when it's going on a lot in a work environment, it can cover up one person who might need to talk and hold them back from wanting to open up. Even away from work, it just puts that mindset in the wrong place for them. So
Right. Yeah, that's a good point too about we don't know what other people have been through. And I think there's a lot of new understanding and awareness around empathy, even in the last year or so, where, we're mostly living at home and working at home and existing at home these days.
yeah,
And, a lot of people can be struggling with hidden things that they're not showing, and we don't exactly know what their life is like. So, trying to understand that people might have some struggles happening and, again, reaching out, connecting, giving people a safe space to share and
yeah,
maybe it is through storytelling or just letting someone know that you are there for them if they need to talk and that they're not alone in whatever they might be going through. And I think creating those spaces and having those conversations, whether it's with friends or even in a work environment, because I do work with corporate clients as well, and we're seeing so much work productivity suffering because people are dealing with all of these other life stresses on top of trying to do their work on a daily basis. So stress levels are so high, and I think people need those connections and those outlets to be able to handle all of the building difficulty. And sometimes it's coming in waves, sometimes it is
yeah.
just building and building. So, really creating those safe spaces to be able to share and connect about our true experience is really important.
Absolutely, and like you say, there's work, there's personal, and education's another one. So anybody in education environment, whether they have teaching, which is work, or students, college, university, but they're basically. I always say there are three places humans exist: work, home, and education. Because if you're not in them, you're out of work, you're homeless, and you're without education. So they tend to be the three biggest areas of life: work, home and education. So they're the three biggest areas that get targeted with business and training. Like you say, you're focused on the corporate world. I'm focused on the teenage side of it. I'm trying to do it through family as well as through schools. But there are sometimes it's a really powerful way of saying do it through work. Because, most parents do work somewhere. And the two cross over. When you've had a really bad day at home with the kids and you've got teenagers yelling and slamming doors and not wanting to talk to you and not doing what they should, and then you've got to go to work and then you're having a similar problem, it all crosses over as well. So it's all valuable.
Yes, and now with so many schools turning to the virtual format, parents and teenagers are sharing the space at home for work and education. So, if teenagers are slamming the doors and yelling about homework and whatnot, parents are, somewhere else in the house trying to do their work, but they're hearing these things happening and it's still affecting them and what they're
Yeah.
trying to do. So I think, our current way of living, hopefully it's temporary, but it's posing some more challenges to our stress and managing our emotions because we don't have as much of a place to go and escape away from those things,
No.
whether it's going to a different physical location or just giving ourselves a little bit of a break and having a mental space around those situations.
Yeah, and I think especially for parents this last year who are trying to work and home educate at the same time in the same room, and they don't have that space, or they're then having to home educate for half the day, work for the other half, but the kids are still yelling in the background, and or trying to work of an evening and they not getting the downtime. It's like, oh my goodness, I just cannot imagine how difficult that's been for them this last year. When normally you would send the kids to school and go to work and then still keep it separate to a degree. Wow, I cannot imagine how difficult that has been.
Yes, I've been seeing so much research in the US about how women are leaving the workforce because they're, handling children at home. There's so much more to do at home with housework and more cooking and house responsibilities. And to manage work on top of all that is just becoming too much. Women are hitting
Wow,
that burnout and it's affecting their health. So a lot of women have
wow,
stepped back from their jobs, either from a leave of absence or something more permanent for the time being until this whole thing shifts. But
yeah.
it's definitely, changing the way families are operating.
Yeah, definitely a massive difference. I think it's probably destroyed a lot of families as well as bringing some others closer together. But yeah, what a year, what a year. And we're starting to come out of lockdown, but it's going to take a long time to feel back to normal. And like you say, for some people, even just going back to work, it's again just another shift. Having got used to being at home and all that, having to go back to work and having had a shortage of money perhaps this last year, might be more pressure to go back to work when they want to stay home. But it's difficult all round.
Right.
It's just so many different situations. But the other one I just want to touch on, which has kind of fascinated me in the past to think about, in terms of how people have stress and strengths, and then sometimes it can be almost a sort of abusive stress, like when they're shouting, yelling, screaming, slamming doors, hitting people, whatever they do when people get to that extreme level. Is that there are in the work environment, you get people who can be really emotionally intelligent at work. They can go to work, they can manage a boardroom, they can manage their staff, but they go home and they can't manage the family. But then you get other people who are brilliant family people who go to work and can't manage people at work. They do their own job, but they couldn't lead at work, and they wouldn't cope with the stress of the boardroom and leading other people and so on. So there is emotional intelligence actually sometimes can be separated into different areas of life. And I think it's quite difficult to find the people who actually have that balance across all areas. And then sometimes you get people who are absolutely brilliant at work, brilliant at home, but you send them off to do some training or an exam and they fall apart, can't cope with it. It's another one. And other people love it. So again, just having that awareness around your strengths and weaknesses in those different zones as well. So is your stress generic across everything? Is it work? Is it home? Is it education? And again, just finding those strategies to cope with filling in those weaknesses. And again, like I say, we've talked a lot tonight about the victim survivor mode. And again, just looking at that in all separate areas of life as well. It doesn't have to be who you are, but it's who you are in that environment or in that situation. Or it might even just be around a certain person. Sometimes that sort of just takes one person to trigger us and everything else is fine,
Yeah, and that's a great point, because if people might feel stressed, they might say, well, I don't know where it's coming from, so how do I know what to do about it? But I think getting curious about the stress and your stress reactions is very telling, to start looking at what is causing your stress, and that helps you know how to potentially alleviate it and what type of stress tools will be helpful for you. So I think people could pay attention to the different situations where they feel that elevated stress response. And for some people, it's like a faster heartbeat, or maybe more shallow breathing. Maybe your palms get kind of sweaty, or you get that butterflies feeling in your stomach. It's different for everybody, so it takes a little bit of individual awareness and paying attention. But if you're finding patterns in those situations, if it always happens when you're talking to a certain person, or going to the same meeting every week at work, or dealing with your child's schooling, and maybe there's a particular trigger around that. And from there, you can start to see where your strengths and skills are and where you might have some gaps to fill. You can learn what type of stress tools will help you handle those situations a little bit better. But I love that
Yeah.
idea about bringing some clarity to those situations, because I think with that clarity comes the power to know how to handle it better.
And I think tying that right back around, when you start to recognise that, we come back to that bit about intentions and doing yoga, breathwork, journaling, with those intentions of recovering and healing and moving into survivor mode. And it all ties in by the time we get to the end of the conversation. I love it. This is Toastmaster training coming up, public speaker training, when you learn to bring it all back together at the end. This is a skill in itself. So yeah, but tying all of that back into itself, so you can go and do, something like yoga and breath work, and say, okay, now I know exactly what stresses it is I want to let go of, what I can use that mindfulness for to create that sense of feeling and of peace and release and, sort of calmer times. So yeah, amazing.
Definitely. And getting clear on what your strengths are too help you know what you're good at, and gives you that confidence where, you're going home and that's where you're strongest. So you can feel good about the decisions you're making there. And, when we have that strength, we feel more capable to handle the challenges as well.
Absolutely. Well, I can't believe we are down to just a couple of minutes to go. That has flown by. It literally has. Yvette says, well done, ladies. Thank you very much, Yvette. She watches every week. Bless her. She's amazing. She's got so much patience. I just want to say also, Ralph's put up here, I'll read this out, of Kay's book, and I feel it's very privileged to have been able to read it and still finding it very interesting and helps me personally. Thank you, Ralph. It's a must read for any teenager or even adult struggling with finding focus, etc. So yeah, Ralph's been absolutely loving the book and shouting out for me. And actually, Ralph's the gentleman that I bought my diffuser from today, and I'm loving that. So I've been using my sense of aroma and relaxation sense. This morning I had something really invigorating on to get me into the right mindset, and tonight something a little bit more soothing. So I'm actually loving that. That's not my form of mindfulness, having that going today. So yes, thank you. And Ralph so very much enjoyed it. Thank you. So anyway, yes, next week, I can't remember the topic now. I did have it, bear with me. I've changed folders now. I've moved to clipboards. I love them. Next week I have Angela Karanja, and it should be about teenage parenting. right up my alley next week. Teenage parenting, this is going to be on fire. But I've loved having you on the show tonight, Courtney. Thank you so much indeed. And again, coming back to the beginning, you said you took on the yoga because you had a diagnosis. How is that for you now?
I think the changes I have made have been huge in helping me improve how I feel. So it has really been life-changing in terms of just managing that in a positive way. And I'm so glad I stepped up to take charge of my health and took that
Well done.
route to become healthier. So thank you so
Lovely.
much.
You're very, very welcome. And I think I need to take some inspiration from you and do the same. And I've been dealing with a lot of things over the last year, but my health is the one on the list that I'm still working on. So I think tonight you've inspired me that I need to get yoga and breathwork back into my routine. So
wonderful. Health's a work in progress. So we can always continue to improve. And I tell my clients, it's never too late to begin again. Every breath is a chance to begin again. We can renew our focus and just take that fresh start.
Yeah, and actually something I didn't say earlier, and I love to describe to people when I say about the importance of stopping to breathe, actually being aware of breathing, is just as roughly, because I'm not scientific, but 2/3 of your body is water, and 1/3 of water is oxygen. If that's not reason enough to breathe, I don't know what is.
True.
H2O. So 2/3 of your body is water, and 1/3 of the water is oxygen. That's why you need to keep breathing with a purpose. Keep it going. But thank you so much to everybody who's watched tonight, and please feel free to leave a hashtag replay afterwards and thumbs up, and let us know what you thought. And I will be uploading it to YouTube afterwards, so if you want to share it with anybody who's not on Facebook and think it's going to be inspiring for them, please do so, and I will put a link down below to last week's replays as well. And if you have any website address or any links that you want to share, please do pop them in the comments afterwards as well, Courtney. But thank you ever so much to everybody for watching in, and we'll see you all again 7 p.m. next Tuesday for another discussion. Thank you. Thank you.